Hello, everybody, and welcome to OpenExO Live. It's really great to be with you this evening or afternoon or morning, depending on where you're watching us from. And this week we have Dr. Arndt Pechstein with us. And Arndt's usually from Berlin, but is coming in from Budapest today. And so really excited to have Arndt here. And before we get him up on stage, I do have a few words from some community members that they shared. And the first one comes from Diego, and he just said, Arndt is very professional, extremely well-structured, sharp, knowledgeable, methodic, and fresh. It is a luxury to work with him. We then have from Cherie, Dr. Arndt Pechstein is a highly skilled coach, consultant, and keynote speaker who is passionate about innovation and impactful change. Arndt embraces hybrid thinking by blending many disciplines to address complex challenges. As a scientist and entrepreneur, he brings biotechnology, neuroscience, and biomimicry to his work. I had never heard of biomimicry before I met Arndt, which is about looking at nature to inspire innovation. Such a fantastic area. Arndt is an outstanding speaker who captivates his audience, a fabulous coach who brings passion to his work, and I would welcome any opportunity to work with Arndt. And then the last one from Daniel. Arndt is an inspiring leader, one of the greatest minds I've ever met. I had the opportunity to be in his team during the coach certification. After that, we had several contacts to share knowledge and ideas. He is highly creative and collaborative, a master in transforming complex ideas into bold strategies, hypnotizing audiences, and inspiring everyone to create a meaningful purpose and develop an exponential mindset. So those are some of the words from some community members. Arndt, welcome from Budapest. How are you this evening?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin, for having me here. And I'm really honored, actually, about all these nice words. So thank you for this nice introduction.
It's always a pleasure. I love to share words from the community. You know, many people say, they were drawn to the community by either our MTP or by the methodology, but what kept them around was this magical community. So it's always nice to share that. And so I always like to start OpenExO Live just by asking if you can share a little bit about yourself. I know you're a neuroscientist and you've done a whole lot of things. Some of the people like Sherry shared a lot about the hybrid thinking and the biomimicry, but just share with folks a little bit about yourself. And also how you came to join the OpenExO community.
Right, gladly. So it's very much connected actually to the EXO and to the MTP that you just mentioned, because my nonlinear career path also involved several various steps. And first was I studied biochemistry, biotechnology, and then ended up doing my PhD in neuroscience, which is super fascinating, working on one of the most complex organs or systems you probably know. But the problem with me in science and academia was it didn't convince me in that sense that and for those of you who maybe have been in academia, know you're chasing the impact factor, which is a metric, how well you publish, how much you're cited. Mm-hmm. And I felt I don't want impact factors, I want impact. So I decided to leave science, but then what do you do as a scientist? So I love scientific questions, scientific approaches. I love natural and biological phenomena. And then I stumbled upon in my search for purpose and actually asking myself, what do I want to leave behind also for my kids, my grandkids? What will I say, what I did with my life? I stumbled upon biomimicry, which was mentioned by Jerry as well. And that is something that deeply inspired and shaped me also in a way, learning from biological systems, from complex adaptive systems, how we can apply strategies from obviously successful systems, living systems, to our human problem solving. And that brought me to design thinking, human-centered approaches, agile approaches, and I brought all this together. And that eventually then, in this kind of connection, I also discovered OpenExO and exponential technologies and all these things through two lines. One is I read Salim's book. The second thing is that dear friends like Diego, on the one hand, he was in my biomimicry cohort, so we shared already quite some time and a lot of values. And on the other hand, also Dea, who's also a very active member in our EXO ecosystem, who's also a dear friend, and we did a lot of projects together, consulting projects. They both happened to post something on some social media about OpenExO and an EXO sprint. And then I was becoming curious, and I read upon it and realized that's connected with the book. And this is how it clicked. And I thought, okay, I need to do this. And this is how I basically became a member of the community. And since then have worked with that methodology. And also as Jerry mentioned, I'm someone who never takes anything as it is, but tries to evolve it and mix it with other things. So for me, always the magic happens when you bring things together. And that's what I'm doing also with our methodology.
Awesome. That's really, really awesome to see how that sort of web works. Now, one thing, of course, that's really important for the EXO methodology, is a massive transformative purpose, and it's right there at the top, pretty essential. Can you share what your massive transformative purpose is, or whether you have more than one? I know we've had this discussion within the community as well. Would you be happy to share that?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So what I discovered in that process that I just mentioned was that I have two things that I would like to work on and have an impact on. The first is, how can we transcend humanity to really leveraging the human potential? Like, I always felt I have both the skill but also a passion of inspiring other people to get better at something, to bring in the best ways they have in terms of skills and passion and knowledge to shape something positive. And that led to the second part. How can we not only think anthropocentric, like human-centered, but how can we think beyond and act beyond our species? And this is this kind of planetary awareness. And these are the two things. So and this is basically putting it down to my MTP, which is basically leveraging human potential for the benefit of our planet and for all living systems. So that's why I call my approach also life-centered, because it's not just about human-centeredness, but really about how can we coexist with the very living systems that are actually the basis for our survival as well.
That's really awesome. And that's sort of an extension of my MTP, which is really about helping people to unlock that potential, right? And I think that by bringing people together who all have purposes that can link really nicely, that's where we can really have a massive impact on the world, right? And individuals and small groups can, of course, do that, and that's usually the types that do, right? Which is really important. So in terms of that purpose and that legacy, can you just share a little bit about like some of the approaches that you've sort of use and you've come up with, and how those tie together?
Yes. So what I've termed it, even like I've developed an approach that I use in my coachings and also in my in the processes I help organizations with, and also not only organizations but also really on a societal level, increasingly more so, because I feel that it's not just something that organizations need, but that we need as a civil society and education and so on. But I call it hybrid thinking, and also in this introduction you mentioned it already. Why? For two reasons. The first is the hybrid between different methods and approaches. And it comes from my own bio. Like, as I mentioned, I come from various viewpoints, and I think we need to bring different perspectives on multidimensional and complex problems. And the second thing is about hybrid. What I mean is hybridizing, breaking down silos, breaking down all these boxes that we have, where we, in the past or even up to now, think things don't belong together. And it's exactly at these intersections, when we break those silos down, that it becomes interesting. And that's what I mean by this, and specifically what this approach and framework, and I'm also currently writing my book about it, is about, is how can we reframe the reality that we're living in? Because currently, and sadly so, we are seeing this VUCA world, this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, as a threat. And we, collectively as society, we embark on negative dystopic narratives. We know about climate change, and we know it's true, but we don't need to hear this every day anymore, how bad it is and how doomed we are. Because what this does also, if you look at neurophysiology, we get into what we call learned helplessness. So we feel we cannot do anything, it's bigger than us. And what this does to us is that we limit our visionary powers, we limit our motivation, our courage, and all these things. And we eventually observe what we observe right now, polarization. We fall back into old patterns. We look for differences and how we separate it from each other. And therefore, I try to create narratives and also like generally the narrative tonality that is positive. And therefore, I offer always a reframe for the VUCA. And the first thing of the V of the VUCA would then be, if everything is volatile and changing, we need something that is more constant and that we're aspiring to do. And this is the vision. So the V for vision, which is the positive narrative where we want to go to, not what we want to avoid. This we have enough, but where we want to go. Because if we have this, we are creative. We are motivated, intrinsically motivated. We also get united because we have a common purpose, a common goal. So that's the first part. The second part then is, and that's the second aspect of hybrid thinking, if we have the U for uncertainty, what we need is the upskilling. We need to empower people to not be the helpless victims of change and passive, basically receivers or recipients, but that we all are basically active drivers of change. And for this, we need to upskill people to their full human potential. So this is something, and it sounds like a contradiction and paradoxon, but it's actually not, because the more we digitalize, the more our human skills will become valuable, because this is what makes us relevant in a digital world. And these are the skills like empathy, like collaboration, like critical thinking, systems thinking, self-reflection, value, like a value skills, and so on. So this is the second. The third aspect is then, in a complex world, we need to collaborate. System science tells us there is no such thing like taking things apart, solving them separately. You have to look at it from multi-perspectives. And for this, you need diversity, you need collaborations. We need a collaborative, abundance-based mindset to solve problems and create value. And that leads to the fourth aspect. What is the A? The A and the counterpart to ambiguity is basically adaptation or adaptiveness and agility. And this involves also the question, where do we want to go with our business models, with our organizations, with our society? So what's the value we want to create? And basically think in systems and create something meaningful for the greater good. And that links back to the vision. So with that, we leverage the potential of the VUCA. As we all know, I mean, it's an abundance-based world, and don't see the scarcity, what we lose or what we can't control, because it will never be controllable again. The question is, how do we cope with this? And I think we need positive coping mechanisms. And with that, I intend to provide such measures or mechanisms and approaches to cope with this kind of complex and volatile world.
Man, so so, you know, this thinking, you've been developing this now over how long? How many?
Almost 10 years, actually. Almost like this year is actually the 10th year that I'm doing this, and it has evolved over time. And it's really based also on the background. As I said, it involves neuroscience aspect, positive psychology, biomimicry, agile mindset, and agile approaches. But also from EXO, all these things come together. And therefore, I said I always blend this and think, what is the most useful setting to bring this together to create like something that basically inspires the future and creates the future together with people.
No, absolutely. You know, if you look at sort of the EXO attributes, things like embracing autonomy, you know, would fit in there around collaboration, because if you can collaborate but in an autonomous way, that also drives, you know, people's people's feeling of belonging, that they are the masters of their destiny. Because you're right, in that VUCA, that negative VUCA, it's like we are just victims of circumstance, and that's not necessarily, if we want to believe that, then it is true, right?
Right.
But if we believe that we can, positively impact the future, then we can as well. And so I think, though, do you find it that there's many people out there, though, that, from a neuroscience point of view, that there's not a really good understanding of humans, like humans don't really understand themselves that much? What's your sort of thinking on that? Because it just seems like that is the case out there. I'd be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think naturally, as species, as individuals, as creatures, we have this ability to be understanding ourselves, maybe not on a scientific, cognitive level, but as on a spiritual and intrinsic level. But we have lost that. We're totally disconnected from our own human nature and from nature at large. And that is a problem. So we need to rediscover this. And it's not that we totally lost it as a species, but we condition that into our kids. If you look at kids, they are creative, they are curious, they are courageous. They are all these things that we adults tend not to have anymore. Why is that? Because we have I don't even call it education, and call it conditioning. And that's where we lose our human spirit in a way. And we learn to think in boxes, to think in separation. We learn it's humans and nature, and not humans as part of nature. We learn it's like in school, we are conditioned to compete, to work for grades, for extrinsic stimulators, to basically have all the same pace and learn the same things, which is absurd. And with that, we lost our sense and our capability of feeling what is good for us. How am I unique compared to others? Not in a way of in an egocentric way, but in a way how I can make a unique footprint in the community. And this is something we should bring back into our education system, and we should rediscover and retrain in ourselves. And this lets us also understand us better. Not necessarily that we can explain everything scientifically, but I think also getting back into what I call, not just me, but like what's generally called the term as spirituality. Like we are spiritual beings, and we have lost this. And we always equate that with religion, which is a totally different thing. But spirituality is the connectedness, being connected to yourself, being connected to others, being connected to the larger system, eventually to the universe, and understanding yourself as one part of this big system, because everything is connected on quantum physics and systems thinking level. And that is something that we need to embrace again. We don't need to cognitively understand, but we need to embrace it and accept it simply. And that's a totally different standpoint.
No, absolutely. And at the end of July, we as OpenExO are working together with a few other folks on a festival of consciousness, right? In that's happening in Barcelona. And it's quite interesting. Some folks have sort of said, but I don't understand, where's the EXO here, right? Because it's about consciousness. And the idea there is that, yeah, that's what is so important, is that, in order for organizations to be able to, to leverage, what is possible, and to get into that abundance that society tells us is impossible, or that can't happen, we need to understand that what is happening from a global consciousness standpoint. But do you find in business that it is a softening towards what some people might call, but this is too woo-woo or too out there? Like, where do you see it sort of landing?
Oh, absolutely. I see a massive shift, but not just now lately, also not just related to the pandemic, but it really happened throughout the past few and like several years. What we see is whatever was called even like soft skills and esoteric and all these things, and like put a smile on in the 90s, is something that gains importance for various reasons. I see more and more clients that I work with doing mindfulness classes, doing yoga together, having like a meditation before they have a workshop or something, because they feel this groundedness, this self-reflection, or also this me time, or whatever it is, to be a very essential element of our fast-paced life. And and we know also from flow theory and from high performance, peak performance, that this is fundamental to your performance on the long run. I mean, of course, you can have a sprint, but you cannot sprint all the time without also taking out the pace occasionally. And that becomes more and more essential in various ways for, and not only for efficiency reasons, but also work culture. We're talking, like, I'm working a lot with organizations, helping them to transform. And for me, the basis of work and all my clients, I'm on a very close personal level. Because I work with people. I don't work with organizations. I don't work with teams. I work with people, with human beings. And that makes such a difference. If I come in with just a slide deck and tell them about numbers and processes, or if I say, we have tools, we have processes, but a process is process. But more important is what the process does to you and how you use it, and the behavior and the mental models and how we see us as human beings. And that resonates, and people change, they learn. There's a learning curve. Sometimes there are people who are struggling and say, oh, well, I cannot measure this, but eventually they all feel it does something to them, to the work culture, to the satisfaction at work. And eventually that scales. It's not only the satisfaction of this team, because with this kind of work attitude and culture, you infect your basically your intersections to other teams, and eventually that scales up to employer branding. And we know, on a war for talents, we need to have a totally different work setting. It's not just about efficiency and getting your stuff done and you have a box where you work in, but it's about what's your purpose. That's one thing. How do you connect to work? Also, this connectedness to what do I want to spend my lifetime on? I mean, it's a significant share of my life that I contribute to whoever, and I decide in a basically on the Maslow pyramid, on the upper part of this pyramid, what do I want to dedicate my life to and spend most of my lifetime with, where I don't see my family, my friends, or do my hobbies. So it needs to have a validation why I do this. And at the same time, young talents especially want to go to companies that provide working conditions that are conducive to a happy work environment where I can unfold and develop and contribute. And if I don't do this, then it's not like a desired work destination. And all this leads to the fact that they embrace these things more. Some are more embraced than others because they are more already used to, more known, or again, more measurable. But in the end, there's a huge shift towards, that's why we don't even call it soft skills, we call it future skills, to all these things that make us humane, that make us see each other, and that make us create things together in a meaningful way.
No, absolutely. You know, I over the Christmas time, I had quite a long conversation with my father, who is retired and has worked from, you know, 40 years ago and until fairly recently, and he was saying he lived through the shift in the way work happened, right? Where when he started, it was very much about, you know, yes, it was about profit for the organization, but it was about doing that in a way that was beneficial to the town that the business was in, and you know, then it moved, you know, to get rid of pensions and you know, just shareholder value only. And yeah, I mean, I think I really hope we're heading to a space where we can learn from, you know, from the world, like you've said, and make that change, because we need to, because of the problems we've created, and we can solve all those problems. Now, as usual, the time is far too short for this conversation, so we have come to sort of the end of our allotted time, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you again. You know, hopefully when I'm in Europe in July, we can perhaps see each other, connect. perhaps we can try and arrange something with the community, and I'm pretty sure things are going to be a bit more open then. But as you leave today, what is that one thing you want people to sort of take away in terms of, man, this is something that I need to do or implement or share?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said in the beginning. It's the like what I always say is future doesn't just happen, it is created. And it's either created by us or by others. And this is our decision. And this is a very conscious decision. It's a responsibility, but it's not just something, it's not a burden, it's a great gift. And we have this almost unique opportunity in humankind that we can, as individuals and as collectives, have a huge impact. And this is just so much joy, and it enriches life. So I can only encourage everyone to do this and take part in the creation of our future as we want it.
Awesome. Well, Arndt, it's been wonderful chatting to you. Have a fantastic evening there in Budapest.
Thank you.
And we'll chat to you again soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Has been a pleasure.
Bye. Great chatting to Arndt. Always so full of insight. As I did say, do go check out, maybe I didn't say it, but do go check out Arndt's TEDx talks. You can just search his name with TED and they'll come up. They really are amazing. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.